There are some secrets that eat you alive from the inside. Mine started with one forbidden glance across the family dinner table. That single moment changed everything, my marriage, my family, my entire life. Now I'm trapped in a web of desire and guilt that I never saw coming. What would you do if someone you trusted turned your world upside down? If someone who should have protected you became the reason your life fell apart? This is my story, one I never thought I'd tell, but maybe it will help someone else avoid the mistakes I made. My name is Amara, and 6 months ago I became a wife in one of Lagos' most respected families. Like many young Nigerian brides, I moved into my husband's family compound, a sprawling house where 3 generations lived together under one roof. My mother-in-law ruled the kitchen with an iron fist, and my father-in-law, he was everything a traditional family head should be: dignified, successful, and always perfectly composed. In our culture, living with your in-laws is normal, expected even. The new bride is supposed to learn the family's ways, respect the hierarchy, and most importantly, know her place. But no one prepared me for what happens when the lines between family and forbidden desires start to blur. My husband, Chidi, was a rising star in his banking career, always traveling for business meetings in Abuja, Ghana, or London. This is how we build our future, he'd say before each trip. But with each goodbye, the huge family compound felt more and more lonely. My mother-in-law, Mama Chidi, kept me busy with endless household duties. A good wife must know how to manage her home, she'd remind me daily. Between cooking, cleaning, and serving countless relatives who visited, I barely had time to breathe. But it was Papa Chidi, my father-in-law, who noticed my exhaustion. Amara, you've barely touched your food today? Is everything all right? His concern caught me off guard. In a house where everyone treated me like a servant, he saw me as a person. At first, they were just small gestures, defending me when Mama Chidi criticized my cooking, asking about my dreams beyond being a wife. Simple things that made me feel human again. I remember the first time I really noticed him differently. It was during one of those long power outages. The generator had failed, and the house was dark and suffocating. I was alone in the kitchen, trying to finish washing dishes by candlelight when he came in. You don't have to do this now, Amara. Come sit with me on the veranda where there's some breeze. Looking back now, I should have seen the danger in his kindness. But when you're drowning in loneliness, even the devil's hand can feel like salvation. The veranda became our secret meeting spot. Every night after Mama Chidi went to bed, Papa would find reasons to be there. At first, we just talked about books, about life, about my dreams of starting a business someday. He listened in a way Chidi never did. You remind me of myself when I was young, Amara, he said, his voice carrying that deep richness that always made me feel seen. So much fire, so much ambition, trapped by tradition. His hand brushed against mine as he passed me a glass of wine. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. The night air was thick with harmattan dust and something else, something dangerous. My phone buzzed, another message from Chidi, business dinner running late, missing you. 3 weeks he'd been gone. 3 weeks of quick texts and shorter calls. 3 weeks of Papa's increasingly lingering glances. Then came the day that changed everything. I was in the kitchen preparing pepper soup, Chidi's favorite. Papa walked in, closing the door behind him. Let me show you how we used to make it in my village, he said, standing too close behind me. His breath tickled my neck as he reached around to adjust the spices. My heart wasn't just racing, it was screaming. You're shaking, Amara, he whispered, his hand steadying mine over the pot. Are you afraid of me or of what you're feeling? Mama Chidi's voice shattered the moment she was calling from upstairs. Papa stepped away smoothly, as if nothing had happened, but something had, something massive. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept drifting to his touch, his voice, his presence. The guilt was overwhelming, but not as overwhelming as the anticipation of our next moment alone. Chidi's message lit up my phone. Great news. Contract signed. Coming home next week. But home didn't mean what it used to anymore. Home had become a maze of stolen glances, forbidden thoughts, and a growing hunger that no amount of pepper soup could satisfy. Little did I know, Papa had already planned our next encounter, and this time, there would be no interruptions. The day before Chidi's return, I found a note in my room, "Meet me in my study at midnight. We need to talk about Chidi." My hands trembled as I read it. Papa knew that room was strictly off limits to everyone but him. That night, every step toward his study felt like walking through quicksand. The old wooden floors creaked beneath my feet, each sound a warning I chose to ignore. "Come in, Amara." His voice was different, deeper, more commanding. The study was dim, lit only by his desk lamp. He sat there, swirling golden brown whiskey in a crystal glass. "Do you know why I called you here?" he asked, not looking up. To talk about Chidi." My voice betrayed my nervousness. He laughed softly. "No, Amara, to stop pretending. Your marriage to my son," he stood up slowly, "was arranged for business, not love. I've seen how he neglects you, how he takes you for granted." Each step he took closer made my pulse race faster. I backed away until I felt the bookshelf behind me. "This is wrong," I whispered, but even I didn't believe my words anymore. "Is it?" His hand cupped my face. "Then why are you here in my study at midnight?" What happened next was like a fever dream. His lips found mine, and every moral boundary I'd ever known crumbled. It was wrong, destructively wrong, but it felt like coming up for air after drowning for months. The guilt came crashing in the moment it was over. I fled to my room, but I couldn't escape the memory of his touch, the taste of whiskey on his lips, the way he'd made me feel more alive than I had in months. Chidi's message, landing tomorrow morning. "Can't wait to hold you." How do you face your husband when his father's kiss is still burning on your lips? How do you sit across the dinner table pretending nothing has changed when everything has? But the real twist, that night was just the beginning. Chidi's return should have been my salvation. Instead, it became my torment. He brought me expensive gifts, designer bags, gold jewelry, but all I could think about was his father's lingering touch at the dinner table. "You've changed the pepper soup recipe," Chidi noticed, spooning another mouthful. "It tastes better." "Your father taught me his special technique," I replied, then immediately regretted my words. Across the table, Papa's eyes met mine, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. What no one knew was that we'd already crossed that line again and again. The study became our sanctuary of sin. Every creak of its door was another crack in my conscience. But fate had other plans. One afternoon, while Papa and I were lost in each other's embrace, the study door handle turned. We froze. "Papa!" It was Chidi's voice. "Are you in there?" "One moment, son," Papa called out, his composure unshaken as we frantically straightened our clothes. I hid behind the large curtains, heart threatening to burst. "The door's locked," Chidi said. "I'm on an important business call," Papa responded. "We'll talk at dinner." Later that night, Mama Chidi dropped the first bombshell at dinner. "I've invited my sister to stay with us," she announced. "She's very observant, always notices things others miss." The way she looked at me, did she know? Had she seen something? But that wasn't even the biggest shock. Chidi cleared his throat. "Actually, I have news too. The bank is promoting me to our London office. We'll be moving to London." He beamed at me. "No more long-distance marriage." I felt Papa's fork clatter against his plate. The room spun. London. Leave. The thought of escaping should have relieved me. Instead, it felt like a death sentence. That night, Papa slipped another note under my door. "I won't let you go." But the universe wasn't done with its twists. The next morning, I woke up violently ill. At first, I blamed it on anxiety until I realized I'd missed my period. The pregnancy test in my bathroom wasn't just a stick. It was a ticking time bomb. And as I stared at those two pink lines, one question burned in my mind: whose baby was growing inside me? But that wasn't even the worst part. Someone had been watching us all along, gathering evidence, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy everything. The pregnancy test shook in my hands as I heard footsteps approaching the bathroom. I quickly stuffed it in my pocket, but as I opened the door, there stood Mama Chidi's sister, Auntie Grace. "Are you feeling well, my dear?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You've been glowing lately." That evening, everything imploded. "I have something to share," Auntie Grace announced, placing an envelope on the dinner table. My heart stopped. There were photos. Photos of Papa and me in the study, on the veranda, every stolen moment captured. "I've been watching you too," she said, her voice dripping with venom. What would the church members say about their respected elder and his son's wife? TD grabbed the photos, his hands shaking. "What is this? What eye is this?" Papa stood up, his authority filling the room. "Son, let me explain." "Explain what?" Chidi's fist smashed against the table. "How long? How long?" That's when I felt it, warm liquid trickling down my leg. The stress, the shock, I was bleeding. "I'm pregnant," I whispered. The room went deadly silent. Mama Chidi fainted. Chidi turned pale. But Papa's face showed something I'd never seen before, fear. The baby, Chidi's voice was hollow. "Is it even mine?" Before anyone could respond, another voice cut through the chaos. "No, it's not." Everyone turned. There in the doorway stood Papa's youngest wife from the village, the one nobody talked about, the one he'd hidden away. "I've seen this before," she said calmly. "He did the same to his brother's wife 15 years ago. That child is your cousin, Chidi, not your half-brother." The room exploded into chaos. As I clutched my stomach in pain, secrets of decades began pouring out, Papa's carefully built empire of lies crumbling with each revelation. The next thing I remember was waking up in the hospital. The doctor's words echoed in my head. "The baby is safe, but you need complete bed rest." TD sat by my bedside, his face aged by a decade and one night. "I've known about my father's tendencies," he finally spoke. "It's why I traveled so much. I was investigating, gathering evidence, those business trips, I was meeting his other victims, building a case." "Why didn't you warn me?" I whispered. "I thought if I married someone strong like you, someone he couldn't manipulate," Chidi's voice trailed off. "I used you as bait. Amara, I'm no better than him." The police came the next day. Papa's youngest wife had opened a Pandora's box of decades of manipulation, abuse of power, and carefully orchestrated seductions. 3 other families had come forward. The respected elder's true face was finally exposed. Mama Chidi visited next, her pride finally broken. I knew, she confessed, tears streaming. "I've always known. It happened to my sister 2 years ago. But tradition, reputation, I became his accomplice through my silence." The pregnancy test results finally came back. The baby was Chidi's, but that didn't make anything simpler. "I'm not going to London," I told Chidi, "and I'm not staying here either." He nodded, understanding. "The family compound is yours. It's the least we can do. Papa's other victims, they'll need a safe place, a support system." "What about the baby?" he asked. "This child will know the truth," I said firmly. "All of it. No more family secrets poisoning generations." This is my story. A story of choices, mistakes, and redemption. But now I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Can love, trust, and family truly coexist without transparency? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join me next week for another story that will make you question everything you think you know about life and love. See you soon.